8 Characteristics of Psychopathic Killers. Welcome to Odd Occasions, where we dive into the eerie, the unusual, and the unsettling stories that captivate our curiosity. Today, we're venturing into the dark minds of some of history's most notorious killers, individuals with psychopathic tendencies that make their crimes as shocking as they are perplexing. Not every psychopath becomes a killer, but for those who do, a unique and chilling darkness lurks within. Join us as we reveal 8 defining characteristics of psychopathic killers, traits that set them apart from ordinary society and plunge them into the shadows. Number 8. The charming psychopath. We're all familiar with charm. Think of a man who's intelligent, well-spoken, maybe even handsome. He's polite, smooth, and makes you feel safe. But for a psychopath, charm isn't just a personality trait. It's a mask, a weapon. Take Ted Bundy, for instance. To the world, Bundy seemed like a regular guy, maybe even a friend. But behind his friendly demeanor, he hid dark intentions. By appearing approachable, he gained his victims' trust, making them vulnerable. Vulnerable enough to let their guard down. Albert DeSalvo, known as the Boston Strangler, had a similar way about him. DeSalvo could put people at ease in seconds, but beneath that easygoing exterior was a man capable of chilling brutality. In the early 1960s, DeSalvo would go on to murder 13 women, strangling most of them with nylon stockings. And while there's still some debate over whether he was responsible for all the murders, the shadow of the Boston Strangler remains one of history's most haunting. Charming on the outside, deadly within, it's a combination that hides evil in plain sight. Number 7. The cold and calculating psychopath. Psychopaths are notorious for their lack of empathy. They're often described as cold and calculating, willing to manipulate and harm without a second thought. For these individuals, every move is meticulously planned, ensuring they stay in control, whether it's in their personal lives or in the crimes they commit. Take Daniel Kelsall. He's often seen as the epitome of a born psychopath, someone who not only meticulously planned a horrific crime, but also carried it out with chilling precision. In 2013, Kelsall, then only 20 years old, fixated on his victim, Morgan Huxley. Kelsall stalked Huxley, following him home, where he overpowered him in a shocking assault. Kelsall stabbed Huxley more than 20 times, leaving him for dead. Though his final actions were frenzied, Kelsall's crime was planned down to the last detail, reducing the chance of mistakes. Disturbingly, he's shown no remorse since his conviction and remains more interested in pursuing his own desires behind bars than reflecting on his actions. A meticulous mind, devoid of empathy. It's a deadly combination. Number 6. The superior psychopath. Pride can mean many things. For most, it's a sense of honor or satisfaction with achievements or heritage. But for a psychopath, pride takes on a darker meaning, an inflated sense of superiority and even pride in their crimes. Take Samuel Little, a man who harbored an immense sense of pride in his horrific acts. In 2014, he stood trial for the murders of 3 women in California and was sentenced to life without parole. But in 2018, something unexpected happened. Little began to confess, and not to a few more murders, but to dozens. He eventually admitted to killing as many as 93 people over a span of 35 years, from 1970 to 2005. To date, at least 50 of these murders have been confirmed by investigators. What's chilling is that Little wasn't prompted by police to confess to these crimes. Clinical psychologist Dr. Rebecca Seifert Lynch, who hadn't directly examined Little, speculated that he confessed simply because he was proud of his actions. To Little, his crimes were his badge of honor. And when he received yet another life sentence, his smirk in court confirmed what many had already suspected. Little took immense pride in being the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history. a superiority complex, and a lack of remorse. For a psychopath, these traits can drive not just the crime itself, but the haunting pride that follows. Number 5. The schizoid psychopath. Schizoid personality disorder is rare and often leads those affected to avoid social situations with little desire for friendships or relationships. Many who suffer from this disorder may have experienced childhood neglect or abuse, fostering a sense of isolation and a tendency toward self-serving victimhood. Although schizoid personality disorder doesn't usually lead to violence, in extreme cases, the emotional detachment can result in harmful behavior toward others. André Chikatilo exemplified this rare and dangerous intersection. Diagnosed as a schizoid psychopath after his arrest, Chikatilo saw himself as powerless in real life but created a fantasy world where he was powerful and in control. As a teacher, he struggled with discipline and failed to gain his students' respect. Over time, his frustrations grew, leading him to act inappropriately around his students, eventually resulting in his forced resignation. Though he left his teaching job in 1981, Chikatilo had already begun a violent spree in 1978 that would haunt his community for years. Nicknamed the Red Ripper, Chikatilo was convicted of multiple murders in 1992, and his case remains one of the most infamous examples of schizoid psychopathy. His actions reflected the dangerous extremes of isolation and suppressed rage, showcasing a disturbing blend of detachment and violence that ultimately led to his execution in 1994. Number 4. The deceitful and manipulative psychopath. Psychopaths are some of the most dangerous narcissists. They disregard societal rules, taking their disdain for authority to extreme levels with a calculating and ruthless approach. Known for their cunning, they're often driven by a need to manipulate and deceive, and many take pleasure in inflicting emotional, physical, and financial harm on their victims. One infamous example is John Wayne Gacy. Gacy presented himself as a friendly figure in his community, even dressing up as Pogo the Clown to entertain children. But behind the facade, he led a dark double life. In 1964, Gacy was convicted for assaulting 2 boys, serving 18 months before relocating to Chicago, but his criminal behavior didn't stop there. In 1976, when the parents of a young teenager who worked for Gacy reported their son missing, police took no action. It wasn't until 1978, following the disappearance of another boy, that authorities searched Gacy's house, uncovering disturbing evidence that led to his arrest. Gacy attempted an insanity defense, but was found guilty and sentenced to death. To the end, he denied responsibility, even saying, "I think after 14 years under truth serum, had I committed the crime, I would have known it." He continued to manipulate reality, refusing to acknowledge the lives he destroyed, all while maintaining an outwardly likable persona that fooled many of his neighbors. A master of deception, Gacy demonstrated the lengths to which a psychopathic mind will go to hide its darkest secrets. Number 3. The situational psychopath. When we think of depravity, we often think of extreme moral corruption, a quality that applies to all killers but to an extreme degree for some. Charles Albright, often dubbed a situational psychopath, personifies this idea, an individual who blends shocking depravity with an otherwise polished life. Albright's fascination with anatomy began disturbingly young as he practiced taxidermy on small animals during his teenage years, which he later defended as a hobby. By age 13, he was arrested for the first time, but his outwardly polite and intelligent demeanor kept him in good favor with many. Albright was highly intelligent, enrolling in North Texas University at just 15 and even beginning pre-med studies before dropping out. At 16, however, he was arrested again, this time for theft and possession of firearms, earning him a year in prison. This pattern continued, with Albright alternating between brief stints in prison and a respectable life on the outside. In 1990, Mary Lou Pratt, his first known murder victim, was found. She had been beaten, shot, and, chillingly, her eyes had been surgically removed. In 1991, 2 more victims met the same fate, their bodies beaten and their eyes carefully extracted. When police arrested Albright, those who knew him were in disbelief. Fluent in Spanish and French, a skilled painter, and a piano player, Albright was described as a soft-spoken gentleman, hardly someone they would associate with violent crime. Ultimately, Albright was convicted of only 1 murder, though his connection to other violent acts remains in focus. Today, he is confined to a psychiatric unit in Texas, a complex blend of intelligence and depravity whose case highlights the hidden darkness some situational psychopaths harbor. Number 2. The Narcissistic and Boastful Psychopath. Some psychopathic killers feel they deserve recognition for their horrific acts, and few embody this trait more than Ian Brady. Described as a true psychopath, Brady, along with his accomplice, Myra Hindley, murdered 5 children, with at least 4 suffering sexual assault. Their crimes were so heinous that both were sentenced to life imprisonment. Hindley made repeated efforts to escape her sentence, distancing herself from Brady and even professing innocence before ultimately confessing to her involvement in all 5 murders. But Brady, in stark contrast, reveled in the notoriety. In 2003, forensic psychiatrist Professor Jeremy Coyd interviewed Brady, who showed no remorse for his crimes, smirking at the mere suggestion. During the interview, Brady hinted that he may have been responsible for more murders than those known to authorities. He admitted, chillingly, that while he found a thrill in killing, the sensation was ultimately disappointing, a fleeting high that he could never fully satisfy. A disturbing mix of ego and brutality, Brady's case is a stark reminder of the callous pride that defines the narcissistic psychopath. Number 1. The thrill-seeking psychopath. Psychopathic killers often seek out extreme thrills, craving attention and exploiting those around them without remorse. They get bored easily, constantly testing boundaries to satisfy their darker impulses. This thrill-seeking nature is often masked by a polite and seemingly unassuming demeanor, which can make these individuals all the more dangerous. One of the most infamous thrill-seeking psychopaths was Jeffrey Dahmer. Outwardly polite and unremarkable, Dahmer almost managed to convince police that they'd been misled when his final intended victim, Tracy Edwards, managed to escape and lead officers to Dahmer's apartment. A few disturbing photos lying out in the open were the only immediate signs of danger. Without them, police might have left without further investigation, dismissing Dahmer as just another quiet, ordinary man. But the truth was far from ordinary. As the police dug deeper, they uncovered a chilling array of evidence: human skulls on a shelf, a drum containing dismembered bodies, and preserved heads in a freezer. Further investigation revealed Dahmer's experimentation with cannibalism, part of his efforts to satisfy his disturbing fantasies. Ultimately, he was sentenced to 16 life terms for murder and was killed by a fellow inmate in 1994. Dahmer's case is a chilling reminder of the depths to which thrill-seeking psychopaths will go to satisfy their desires. Thank you for watching Odd Occasions. If you found today's video thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do these characteristics surprise you, or do they align with what you expected? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, stay curious, stay cautious, and join us next time for more of the world's strangest and most haunting tales.